Sophia's cry was muffled by the rough hand pressing tightly against her lips. The air in the room was thick with the sour stench of cheap liquor and sweat. The creaking wooden beams seemed to echo with the cruel laughter of the man who had bought her, like she was just another item to own. He was drunk, his face flushed and bloated, his breath rank as he forced her down against the splintering wooden table. She had been sold like livestock, a mere transaction, a few coins exchanged, and her freedom taken in one cruel moment. The man, Gordon, believed she was his to do with as he pleased. His two hired goons had already stumbled out, leaving him alone with her. They'd laughed on their way out, knowing what was about to happen. But Sophia, though trembling, was not about to give in. Her heart raced, pounding against her ribs, and her mind screamed for her to fight. As his hands began to rip at her dress, she reached for the nearest object within arm's reach, a thick glass bottle half full of whiskey. With all the strength she had left, she smashed it into the side of his head. The sickening sound of shattering glass, followed by his roar of pain, filled the air. Blood poured from his temple, but he wasn't done. Cursing, he swung his arm and hurled her across the room. Her body collided with the sharp corner of a table. A jagged edge bit into her side. She gasped, clutching her wound, but refused to crumple. No, she wouldn't die here. Gordon staggered toward her, fury flashing in his eyes, but Sophia moved faster. She grabbed a burning candlestick and thrust it into his chest. He stumbled back, choking on the flames, before collapsing to the floor in a heap. His eyes burned with hatred, but his body had betrayed him. Without hesitation, Sophia bolted out the door, gasping for breath, her vision spinning. The night air hit her like a cold slap. The horse she'd used to escape was still tied outside, her hands slick with blood as she yanked the reins free. Every movement made her wound scream in pain, but she ignored it. She forced herself onto the saddle, and with a deep breath, urged the horse forward. The animal galloped into the night, hooves thundering against the earth. The pain in her side was unbearable, but the terror of being caught kept her from stopping. She held on tight, her blood-soaked dress clinging to her skin, her mind barely functioning as the darkness swallowed her up. The stars blurred above her, and her heart hammered in her chest. No one followed. No one cared. But she was alive. By the time dawn broke, she was barely conscious. The horse stumbled beneath her, its hooves clumsy as it fought to keep going. It collapsed, and Sophia slid off, her body trembling as she hit the hot desert sand. Her vision swam, the pain in her side almost unbearable. She pressed her hands to the wound, but they were weak, blood-slick, her breathing shallow. She thought this was it. Her time had come. And then, just as she was about to give in, she heard the sound of hooves. Slow, purposeful, like the rider knew exactly where he was going. A figure appeared against the rising sun, tall, broad, his gray-streaked hair shining in the light. Mason Brooks, a rancher scarred by the ghosts of his past, looked down at her with a frown. His face softened with concern, though he was a stranger to her. Her lips trembled as she forced herself to speak. "Please, take it off," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. She tugged weakly at her torn dress, revealing the deep wound in her side. Blood pooled beneath her, staining the sand. Mason's jaw clenched, and something like sorrow flickered in his eyes. He knelt beside her, his movements steady and practiced. Without a word, he pressed a cloth against the wound, his hands firm, yet gentle. Despite the pain, Sophia couldn't pull away. She was too weak. "Hold still," he murmured, his voice rough from years of silence and solitude. "If you want to live, let me help." Sophia didn't resist. The cloth stung, but there was something else, a strange relief. For the first time in years, someone was trying to help her, not hurt her. She closed her eyes and let herself breathe, remembering the night before, the laughter, the stench of whiskey, the way Gordon had thrown her against the table. Her body ached, her ribs bruised, her side searing where the jagged wood had torn her skin. "I was nothing to them," she whispered, barely able to speak. "Sold like I was just some thing. A deal over whiskey. I had to fight. If I stayed, I would have died." Mason's eyes darkened, but he said nothing. His hands worked quickly to stop the bleeding, his mind clearly elsewhere. Sophia's words had triggered something deep inside him, memories of a life he'd buried long ago. The kind of men who sold lives. He knew them all too well. And as he looked down at this girl, broken yet unyielding, he realized something. She reminded him of the daughter he had lost, and helping her now might drag him back into a past he was desperate to forget. Her eyes fluttered open, locking with his. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Why not leave me to die like the rest?" Mason paused. The question cut through him, deep and raw. He didn't have an answer. Not yet. Slowly, he lifted her into his arms, cradling her fragile body, and placed her gently on his horse. Sophia winced, but held on to him, her fingers gripping his arm. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that Mason was no ordinary rancher. His past was filled with secrets, dark and terrifying ones. And soon, those secrets would come crashing back into both their lives. Mason's horse moved steadily through the desert, the early morning light illuminating the barren landscape. Sophia rested against him, her body weak, her head resting on his shoulder. Every movement of the horse made her flinch in pain, but she stayed silent. She'd survived a hellish night. Now she was holding on to a stranger who seemed unshaken by the blood on her clothes. When they reached the ranch, Sophia was surprised by the simplicity of it. It wasn't a mansion, nor was it falling apart. The homestead was sturdy and weathered, a place that had clearly endured its own storms. To Sophia, who had known only cages and dark rooms for so long, it felt like a slice of heaven. Mason gently helped her off the horse and guided her inside, laying her down on a couch near the warm fire. Sophia wanted to speak, wanted to thank him, but her voice broke. It had been years since anyone had shown her kindness, let alone the feeling of safety. The soft padding of small footsteps drew her attention, and she looked up to see a little girl standing in the doorway, her eyes wide and curious. She was about 7 or 8, her hair tied up with a simple ribbon. "Papa," the girl asked, her voice innocent and full of hope. "Is she going to be okay?" Mason nodded. "She will, if she rests." The girl, Mason's daughter, Lily, moved closer, sitting down beside Sophia. She folded her hands in her lap and stared at her with an openness only a child could have. There was no fear in her gaze, only warmth. As Mason stepped outside, Lily turned to Sophia. "I always wished I had a mama," she said shyly. "Maybe one day I will." Sophia's chest tightened, and she fought back tears. The little girl's words pierced her heart. Not from pain, but from something deeper, she thought. No one had ever looked at her like that, not as a piece of property, not as something to be used and discarded, but as someone who could be loved. Sophia turned her face, hiding her tears. But Lily saw. She said nothing, only reached out, sitting quietly beside her, offering comfort without asking for anything in return. For the first time in years, Sophia allowed herself to believe she could belong somewhere. That maybe, just maybe, she wasn't defined by what had happened to her, but outside, danger was still lurking. And Mason knew that all too well. Before we dive deeper into this story, if you've been enjoying it so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It means the world to me, and I love hearing your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? I'm so curious to know. The sun hung low, casting a warm, golden glow over the ranch as Sophia sat on the porch, wrapped in a thick shawl Mason had given her. Lily sat beside her, humming a tune, her small, innocent voice bringing a calmness to the air. But that peace didn't last long. The sound of horses approaching broke the silence. Two figures appeared in the distance, their horses kicking up dust. Mason stepped out, his eyes narrowing as he gripped the shovel in his hands. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest,